You're nothing but a disappointment, Richard spat, his perfectly tailored suit barely containing his rage as he threw my duffel bag onto the driveway. All that money spent on your education, and this is how you repay us. I stood there, watching as my belongings scattered across the perfectly manicured lawn of our family estate. My mother hovered in the doorway, wringing her hands but saying nothing, as usual. My name is Alexandra Bennett, though everyone calls me Alex. At 22, I was being thrown out of my childhood home because I'd refused to join the family business, Meridian Enterprises, one of the largest real estate development companies in Chicago. I told you, I want to start my own company, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. I have different ideas, different goals. Different goals. Richard laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. You want to waste your time on sustainable housing projects, low-income developments. That's not how you build an empire, Alexandra. That's how you go broke. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Sweetie, maybe if you just tried it Richard's way. I turned to look at her, this woman who had once taught me to stand up for what I believed in, now reduced to an echo of her husband's opinions. She changed so much since marrying Richard 7 years ago, becoming smaller, quieter, more afraid. Mom, I said softly, you know this isn't right. Dad would have. Don't you dare bring your father into this. Richard's face reddened. That bleeding heartful died broke because he couldn't see the bigger picture. I built this family's fortune back up. I gave you everything, and this is how you thank me. I felt my hands clench into fists. My father hadn't died broke. He died trying to save a project that would have provided affordable housing to hundreds of families. Richard had swooped in afterward, saving my mother from financial ruin by marrying her and taking control of everything, including the remains of my father's company. You didn't give me everything, I said, my voice cold. You took everything. My father's company, his vision, his legacy. His legacy. Richard sneered. His legacy was failure. I turned that mess into Meridian Enterprises. I made it something worth having. And if you won't appreciate that, if you won't do what needs to be done to keep building this empire, then you can get out. See how far your precious ideals take you without our money, our connections. I looked at my mother one last time, silently begging her to say something, to stand up to him. But she just looked away, tears in her eyes. Fine, I sat gathering my scattered belongings. I'll go, but remember this moment, Richard. Remember exactly what you're throwing away. He laughed again, that same cruel sound. Throwing away. Please, you're nothing without this family, Alexandra. Nothing. I picked up my bags, straightened my shoulders, and smiled. Not a warm smile, but one that would have made my father proud, determined, unwavering. We'll see, I said simply, then turned and walked away. I spent that first night at my best friend Maya's apartment, sitting on her couch as she paced back and forth, her fury on my behalf almost comical. He can't do this, she exclaimed for the 10th time. He can't just throw you out because you won't be his corporate puppet. I watched her, feeling strangely calm despite everything. Actually, he can. The house is in his name. The company is in his name. He's made sure everything belongs to him. Maya flopped down beside me, running a hand through her dark curls. What about your trust fund? The one your dad set up. Richard convinced Mom to let him manage it years ago, I said bitterly. It's gone now, probably absorbed into Meridian's accounts. That's theft. Maya sat up straight, her lawyer instincts kicking in. We could fight it. With what money? I asked quietly. Against his army of lawyers? No, Maya. I need to be smarter than that. She studied my face for a moment. You have a plan, don't you? I nodded slowly, pulling out my laptop. Before my dad died, he taught me everything about the business. Not just the numbers and contracts, but the relationships, the people. Richard might have the money and connections now, but he doesn't understand what really makes a development company work. I opened a folder filled with documents I've been gathering for months. Market analyses, property reports, demographic studies. Look at this, I said, showing her a map of Chicago's neighborhoods. Richard's focused on luxury developments, high-end properties. But there's a huge untapped market for sustainable, affordable housing. People want communities, not just buildings. Maya leaned in, her eyes scanning the data. This is incredible, Alex, but starting a development company takes capital. Lots of it. I know, I said, pulling up another document. That's why I've been saving every penny I could for the past 3 years. I have about $50,000 hidden away in an account Richard doesn't know about. That's not enough. It's enough to start, I interrupted. To rent a small office, hire 1 or 2 people. Dad always said the most important thing in this business isn't money. It's vision and persistence. Maya was quiet for a moment, then smiled. You're really going to do this, aren't you? Take on Richard at his own game. I closed the laptop, thinking about my father's last words to me. Always build something that matters, Alex, something that lasts. Yes, I said firmly. But I'm not playing his game, I'm playing mine. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I found a tiny office in a less than prestigious part of town. The kind of neighborhood Richard wouldn't be caught dead in. It was perfect. Maya helped me with the legal paperwork to establish Bennett Development Group. The name was deliberate, a reminder of my father's legacy and a challenge to Richard's attempt to erase it. My first hire was Tom Chen, a brilliant architect who'd quit Meridian because he was tired of designing soulless luxury condos. He took one look at my plans for sustainable, community-focused developments and signed on immediately, even though I could barely afford to pay him. Money isn't everything, he said, examining my sketches for our first proposed project. Sometimes you need to build something that matters. I nearly cried hearing my father's words echoed back to me. Our first real break came through an unexpected source. Sarah Martinez, one of my father's old colleagues, reached out after hearing I'd started my own company. Your father helped me when no one else would, she said over coffee. Gave me my first contract when I was just starting out. I never forgot that. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was information about a property in a struggling neighborhood, perfect for our vision of affordable, sustainable housing. The owner's willing to sell below market value, Sarah explained. The neighborhood needs revitalization, but not gentrification. They need someone who understands the difference. I studied the documents, my mind already racing with possibilities. This could work, I said slowly. But we need investors. Sarah smiled. I might know a few people who remember your father's way of doing business, people who are tired of dealing with companies like Meridian. That night, as I sat in my tiny office going over the numbers, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Richard says you started a company. Please don't do anything foolish. Come home. We can work this out. I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. I am home, Mom. I'm building something that matters. Then I turned back to my work, my father's picture watching over me from its place on my desk. Richard thought he'd broken me by taking away my inheritance, my security. He didn't understand that my father had left me something far more valuable: knowledge, principles, and a vision of what development could really mean. Let Richard laugh. Let him think I would fail. I was my father's daughter, and I was just getting started. 10 years passed quickly when you were building something from the ground up. Bennett Development Group had grown from that tiny office into a respected name in sustainable development. We weren't as big as Meridian, but we were making waves. Our first project, the one Sarah had brought us, had been a success beyond our wildest dreams. The sustainable apartment complex, complete with community gardens and shared workspaces, had become a model for urban development. More importantly, it had given us credibility. I was reviewing plans for our newest project when Maya burst into my office, her face flushed with excitement. Have you seen this? She asked, tossing a financial newspaper onto my desk. The headline made my heart skip. Meridian Enterprises facing financial crisis. Sources say bankruptcy imminent. It's all over the industry news, Maya continued, sitting down across from me. Richard overextended on those luxury developments downtown. The market shifted, and now he can't find buyers. The banks are calling in their loans. I picked up the paper, scanning the article carefully. It detailed what I'd suspected for months. Richard's aggressive expansion had left Meridian vulnerable. He'd bet everything on a luxury market staying strong, ignoring the growing demand for sustainable, affordable housing. There's more, Maya said, leaning forward. Your mother called me this morning. That got my attention. I hadn't spoken to my mother in years, though I knew she occasionally checked in with Maya about me. What did she want? They're looking for investors. Desperately. Richard's trying to save the company, but no one's biting. The market knows Meridian's in trouble. I sat back in my chair, letting the information sink in. After all these years, after everything Richard had done, here was an opportunity I'd never expected. We could do it. Maya said quietly. Bennett Development has the capital now. We could buy Meridian. She was right. 10 years of smart investments and successful projects had given us substantial resources. We weren't the tiny startup Richard had laughed at anymore. It's not about revenge, I said slowly, more to myself than to Maya. Of course not, she agreed. It's about business. About doing something that matters. I looked at my father's picture, thinking about everything that had happened since that night Richard threw me out. About all the families we'd helped, the communities we built. Set up a meeting, I said finally, but not with Richard. With the board. The Meridian Enterprises boardroom was exactly as I remembered it. All mahogany and leather, designed to intimidate. But I wasn't the scared 22-year-old anymore. I walked in confidently, Maya beside me, and took my seat at the table. Richard's face when he saw me was worth every struggle of the past 10 years. He'd aged considerably, his hair now more gray than black, lines of stress etched deeply around his mouth. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, looking at the board chairman. "Ms. Bennett represents Bennett Development Group." The chairman replied calmly. "They've expressed interest in acquiring Meridian's assets." "This is ridiculous," Richard exploded. "She's trying to save your company," I interrupted, my voice clear and strong. "Or what's left of it." I opened my presentation folder, distributing copies around the table. "Meridian's current market position is untenable," I began, my tone professional and detached. "Your luxury developments are sitting empty while the demand for sustainable, affordable housing continues to grow. Your debt load is unsustainable, and your reputation in the industry is deteriorating." I clicked through slides showing market analyses, financial projections, and development plans. Bennett Development Group proposes a complete restructuring. We'll consolidate the viable projects, redirect resources towards sustainable development, and implement community-focused initiatives that have proven successful in our other developments. The board members were listening intently, many of them nodding as I spoke. They knew I was right. They'd seen the numbers. "This is our city," I continued. "These are our communities. Development isn't just about building luxury towers, it's about creating spaces where people can live, work, and thrive." That's what my father understood, and that's what Bennett Development Group has proven over the past 10 years. Richard stood up abruptly, his face red. "This is absurd. She's trying to steal everything I've built." "Everything you built?" I asked quietly. "You mean everything you took? My father's company? My trust fund? The legacy you tried to erase?" The room went silent. "Mr. Stevens," I addressed the board chairman directly, ignoring Richard's outburst. "Our offer is fair. More than fair, given Meridian's current situation. But it's time sensitive. The market won't wait, and neither will we." The chairman nodded slowly. "The board will need to discuss this, of course. But speaking personally, Ms. Bennett, your proposal is intriguing." "This isn't happening," Richard sputtered. "I won't allow." "It's not your decision anymore," the chairman cut him off. "The board has a responsibility to the shareholders. And right now, Ms. Bennett's proposal represents the best path forward." As we left the boardroom, I heard Richard calling after me. "Alexandra, you can't do this." I stopped and turned to face him. "Actually, I can. And I am. Remember what you said to me 10 years ago? That I was nothing without your money, your connections." I smiled, not unkindly. "You were wrong, Richard. I had something much more valuable, my father's vision, his principles, and his determination to build something that matters." The acquisition was finalized 3 weeks later. The morning after the papers were signed, I walked into my father's old office, my office now, and sat down at the desk. Maya found me there, staring at my father's picture. "How does it feel?" she asked. I thought about everything that had happened. The night I was thrown out, the years of hard work, the communities we'd built, the lives we changed. "It feels right," I said simply. "But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." I pulled out the plans for our next project, a mixed-use development that would combine affordable housing with green spaces, community centers, and local businesses. "Dad always said success isn't about how much you build," I told Maya, running my fingers over the blueprints. "It's about what you build and why you build it." Later that day, as I was reviewing documents, my assistant announced a visitor. My mother stood in the doorway, looking smaller and older than I remembered. "Alex," she said softly, "can we talk?" I gestured to the chair across from me. We had a lot to discuss. About the past, about the future, about everything that had happened between that night and now. But as I looked at her, I felt no anger, no bitterness. Just a quiet certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. Of course, Mom, I said, closing my laptop. We can talk about everything. But first, let me show you what we're building. I pulled out the plans for our newest development, not just buildings, but communities. Not just profits, but purpose. My mother studied the drawings, tears in her eyes. Your father would be so proud, she whispered. I know, I replied, looking out at the city skyline. He taught me that success isn't measured in dollars or square footage. It's measured in the lives you change, the communities you build, the legacy you leave behind. My phone buzzed with another proposal, another opportunity to build something that mattered. I smiled, thinking about that night 10 years ago when Richard had thrown me out, thinking he was destroying my future. He hadn't destroyed anything. He'd just cleared the way for me to build something better, something lasting, something that truly mattered. And that was worth more than all his money and connections combined.